So welcome to the last section on this topic of using Microsoft Excel for basic statistical analysis. We have done a number of things to manipulate this data, and the last thing I want to show you is a pivot table. So we've already done table, or in fact doing the table function is what got us this type of table that you see here that can be filtered, and this is a topic that we've already discussed on how to filter and what higher frequency filters or higher order filters we have available. But what we want to do is create what's called a pivot table. Pivot tables are interactive tables that allow you to put certain types of data adjacent to each other so you can make quicker comparisons. For example, say I have data in column B here, and I want to compare it directly to data in column D5 here. So what I want to do is I want to make a chart. That's my goal that looks at this data and this data. Of course, these two pieces of data are physically far apart from one another. What I could do is I could copy all of this and paste it there, then copy all of this, paste it here. Now clean this up because I've got my label down here when it should be up here. And now I can highlight this and make a graph. Like so. And this is great. This is pretty easy to do. But say I don't want to compare B to D5. Say now I want to compare H to I10. Well, I'd have to do the same thing again. Or say I want to compare D and I and H9 with each other. So if I want to do multiple comparisons of different sets of data, I'm going to want to create a pivot table because I cannot keep cutting and pasting and dragging these down to a separate section on my worksheet. It takes too much time, it's cumbersome, and every time I do something that takes too much time and is cumbersome, there's a chance I could lose my data. So let's do this pivot table. Let's go to Insert, Pivot Table, select the table or range. So I want to select all of this. This is my table. And I'm going to put it in a new worksheet so I get something nice and clean. And I get this. Now this is really interesting. This is not something you've seen before. Don't worry about what's here in the time being. Worry about what's here. These are the fields. Now the first field I want is the label field. I want my labels to show up horizontally right here. And then everything else will come to play. So I'll click here again. I get this. I take my label and I'm going to move it down to row labels because that's what it is. And there are all my labels. And notice that I have this arrow here because I can sort through these labels. So pivot tables have the ability, give you the ability to sort through different things. And now I want to compare the D column. So I click that with, I don't know, E6. I'm randomly picking something. And J. And here they are. They're right here for me to compare. Now I can do some statistical analysis on this data. To do that, I go to the Data ribbon. I click on Data Analysis and say I want to do t-test, pair sample for two means. So the first variable I'll choose is here. The second variable I'll choose is here. I'll keep everything else the same and I'll say just put it in the same worksheet. Put it right here. Let's do that again. A little error. There we go. So sometimes you get these problems with Excel because it wants the output range and the input range to be perfect. It doesn't give you a lot of room for error. But you notice here that I just took these columns and did a statistical analysis for it. And that's much easier than what I was doing before, which was cutting and pasting each of these columns, putting them adjacent to each other so that I could compare and analyze them. If I want to go back to my pivot table, all I have to do is click here and I get all these options again. So I can take away column J, take away this column, take away this one, and now choose some new ones and run my analysis again. Now you'll note that what you see here are not formulas. These are just numbers, as you can see up here. That means that when you change these columns, this won't change. You're going to have to do this all over again if you want to compare G to C4 to H9. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go back to this data right here and say we want to do a graph. What we have here is a graph of B versus D5. B is in blue, D5 is in red. And I want to make a pivot graph so that I can pick and choose the data that I want to make a graph, excuse me. So I'll go Insert, Pivot Table, but this time Pivot Chart. When I click Pivot Table, I got the actual table. Now I want the chart. So my range of data is the same as before. And I'm going to put it in a new worksheet again. Now I get something that looks like this. It's a tad bit different than what we saw here. This is your pivot table. This is your pivot chart. So the first thing I want are the labels, or the x-axis, and that's up here. So I'm going to take this, drag it down here, and all of a sudden I get a graph with these labels, and that's exactly what I wanted. I'm going to expand this a little bit. Notice also I can filter here, so I can take out A, and not only do I take it out of this section here, but it's removed from my graph as well. But right now I'm going to include everything. Alright, click here again, and now I want to put some columns. So I'm going to choose this, and I might choose E6, and maybe I'll choose B. And you can see that I'm getting an interactive graph, a dynamic graph, one that is changing with what I choose. And if I want to filter, that's even easier, because say I don't want to look at I, E6, and B for all of my labels, but I just want to look at it for the vowels. So the vowels are A and E and I, and you'll note that once I hit OK, not only will this table change, but so will the graph. So pivot tables and pivot charts are extremely powerful because they let you take data that is physically far apart from each other, manipulate it so easy, and get some great interpretations that you can use for abstracts and anything else that's is in your repertoire of scholarly work or scholarly goals. And that concludes this part of the tutorial. Thank you very much.